Okay, please take your seats and settle in for AI and the future of water. Please welcome Kelvin Farr, CEO of Prince William Water, the largest combined water and wastewater authority in Virginia. Mitch Dabling, Technology Director for the Water Business Group at HDR, where he's engineering the future of water at scale through AI. Fredrick, Royan, Global Leader and Vice President of Sustainability and Circular Economy at Frost & Sullivan. Commissioner Tommy Calvert, Bexar County Commissioner in Texas, representing over 500,000 residents in Precinct 4. And moderating this discussion is Shaun Dipnall, Chief Delivery Officer at SAN Technologies. Shaun, over to you.
Thank you, Karen. So graveyard shift, 30 minutes till the bar, or 1.5 hours till the bar. I am going to start off with a few personal stories just to get the sort of discussion going. So I went on holiday to Dubai over the Christmas period. We caught a 6 a.m. flights, it got delayed. We got to Dubai at about 8 p.m. We got stuck. We caught a taxi, we got to a hotel, it was 11 p.m. and everything was closed, so we couldn't eat. And then we wanted to go to get some food. And anyway, my son he was 9 years old, grumpy, tired. It's like, Dad, if I don't eat food now, I'm gonna die. I said, no, my boy, you'll make it through the night. And he's like, no, I'll die. So then we go on to ChatGPT and we figure out how long, if you don't eat food for how many days, when do you think you'll die? Like, when do you got to eat food? How many days? So 1 to 2 months, right? If you don't eat food for 1 to 2 months, you'll die. And I said, actually, what you should worry about is water. If you don't drink water in a short period of time, then you will definitely die. And how long do you think you have to drink water until you die? It's 3 to 7 days, right? So we sort of, as a family, then realized the importance of water there. So that's sort of story one. I'm going to get to questions now. Story two is I live in Cape Town. And in 2018, Cape Town was, I think, the first city in the world that was about to run out of water. Okay? And we'd watch the stats in the dashboards and the dams going from 80 to 70 to 40 to 30 to 10, under the 10. And then it got to a point where each person had a bucket of water every day. And we'd wake up in the morning, and there's 5 of us in the family, we'd fill the buckets, and that was our water for the day. Bath, shower, brush teeth, everything. And it got to a point where in some parts of Cape Town, you had to go in a line, and you'd have to stand on the street and get your water, right? And then there was talking about like civil unrest and fighting, and it was like, it was an incredibly nerve-wracking time. And then we started counting down from 100 days. And it got to like 40 and 30, and I was like, we have to leave this place, right? So another example about the importance of water. And then lastly, to sort of enter into the first question, we've done a lot of work for water utilities around the world, and one of the applications you got asked to build is a burst prediction algorithm, right? And in this sort of kickoff meeting, they said, if a trunk bursts, water can flood a basement and people can drown and die. So you better make sure you get this algorithm right. No pressure. So I guess with all of that, it's like, water is something that we don't think about, but it's incredibly important and mission critical. And without it, we will die and wars will be fought. So with that context, and to sort of open up the discussion, what are the big water operational decisions that you make, and how can and will AI help you make those? I don't know who wants to go first.
First of all, I want to just say how much I appreciate a panel focused on water. Usually when we talk about infrastructure, there's other things, transportation, bridges. So I appreciate this discussion. Got the question in advance, and actually have 2 responses. One would be from the operator standpoint, we'll say ops technician. In the water industry, is very common to see you have a daily plan, and you go out in operations and say you want to address some leaky fire hydrants or something minor to that point, and then you get a call, there's a water main break. And then you have to get off of that preventative maintenance effort to go respond to an emergency. Now, over time, if it keeps happening, the stuff you just tried to do and plan for gets deferred. So the tough choice is related to a priority for that day. So, and that's a daily thing for technicians. What do we do first? And typically you got a work order system, you got a work order for that day, and you try to execute that. Another decision that I have to make annually is funding. So there's a number of issues we go through as leaders of water utilities. If you don't have all the money, you're not getting all the funds that you need. So you have to make those tough decisions about what are you going to plan to fix this year coming up, and what are you going to defer? Because the tough decision is if you're not raising rates, utility rates right now, you're going to be in trouble. So that's never really the good news for ratepayers, is you're going to increase their bill. So what are you going to do with that money? Even when you increase the rates, that's not all the money that you need to get it done. So you got to make a decision on what you're going to do now, short term, and what you're going to do in the future. In regards to the, how AI can help is, and I can talk more about it, but more about real-time health of the infrastructure. We make a lot of assumptions about what needs to be a priority. So, like the technician out there sees a fire hydrant leaking and thinks that's the priority, or a customer calls in, or a politician calls in and thinks that's a priority. But there's other issues that we don't even know that are unknown because they're underground and things of that nature. So I think AI can help us hone in on what the data really is telling us, what the trend is really telling us, and things of that nature, and it definitely would help us prioritize better, in my opinion.
Cool, thanks. Mitch, you're at an engineering firm, if I remember correctly, so you serve, I guess, a bunch of water companies who have
Right.
oversight of a sort of portfolio of activities. What would you see as the big operational decisions that they are making, and how you help them to make those?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and also appreciate the panel on this topic, because I feel like, in general, water it's such an important part of everyone's lives, and yet it frequently is the last thing that a lot of people think about, right? They expect water to turn on, they expect the tap to work, and they only realize when it doesn't work or when something happens how critical it is. And what we've really started to see is, we know that there's infrastructure that's aging, especially in the United States, where a lot of our clients sit. We're relying on systems that are 60, 70 years old, sometimes even longer than that. We're seeing limits on funding. We're also seeing limits on people, on skilled labor. That's a really difficult thing for a lot of the teams that we work with. And so what we're seeing them use their data for is stepping from reacting to what's the loudest problem in the system to ideally prioritizing that, and then really working towards being proactive. So they are going into annual planning cycles, understanding what their largest risks are and prioritizing them in order so that they can be prepared, rather than just going from problem to problem throughout their system. And so that's really exciting to see, because like I say, there's limitations, and you can only accomplish so much in a day, especially with a number of open recs in your team, because you haven't been able to fill them.
Cool, thanks. I mean, just another memory for the work we've done. A lot of the water companies, there's a list of vulnerable customers, right? And there's hospitals, there's the elderly, so in some cases, if you don't give a customer like that water within hours, deaths and challenges can occur. So it's really, like you say, we take it for granted, but it's an absolute necessity and mission critical to our livelihoods.
Right. I always like to remind people I live in Utah, which is earthquake territory for the United States, and when earthquakes happen, they've shown that a lot of the loss of life and a lot of the damage doesn't necessarily come from the event. It comes from the fires that happen after the event, because the water infrastructure isn't there. It's not able to contain it. And it's interesting when you think in that lens how critical this resource is.
And later we'll talk about the sort of projections of water scarcity coming up, right, with the climate change. So it's, these problems will become quite real very quickly. Fredrick, from Wales, thanks for coming through. Yeah, your thoughts on the big operating decisions?
Yeah, thanks, Shaun, and thanks to Sanjay and Fred Sonica for the invitation to join here. So I've got two hats. One is, I work with Frost & Sullivan, so I lead our sustainability practice, and the second hat is I chair the Swan Forum, which is a global community where Swan also is a member, right? On the first point that you mentioned, right, I think I see that there are two challenges, I think, for the water utilities. I think, productivity and the aging workforce. I mean, there's some interesting statistics. For every 5 people who leave the field force in water utilities, only 2 get replaced. So that's a steep kind of productivity challenge, that water utilities are facing, right? But I think that's an excellent opportunity, where we see some really exciting startups who are looking to see how they can target those particular applications. I mean, there are some interesting startups who are looking at video and how video solutions can really support utility staffs where they can reduce even call-outs by 32%. So it's these kind of elements which I think is really exciting, because there is a challenge of productivity, where I think there's the opportunity. And I think the aging workforce as well. I think some really exciting work which is going on in some utilities, where they are using agentic AI and how that can capture some of these valuable experience that we have in the utilities, before that is lost. Because these two are which come top of mind, which I think is really exciting.
Thanks, Fredrick. Tommy?
Well, from my perspective, I represent a county of about 2.3 million people, and we've got 1.5 million people moving into it in the next decade. And so that very rapid growth necessitates decisions about where to invest in water infrastructure, and AI can be very helpful in terms of identifying parcels and getting ahead of some of the challenges of really watershed management. And that's another area of purview that I oversee, which is homeland security and emergencies, where when an engineer puts on paper that the water is supposed to flow into the drainage in a certain way, and then you find out in practice that it doesn't quite materialize the way the engineer drew it up, having sensors and things that can more rapidly redo the watershed management plans are very important. I think as a line of development to what Calvin was talking about with respect to finance, so many governments are underutilizing the financial tools the state and federal government has out there for them. And I think even an AI tool about your probability of success for a federal grant from the USDA for rural water development, or creating a public infrastructure district which can finance the water infrastructure, or creating a tax increment refinance zone, or any number of tools that are there to help finance the infrastructure as you go forward, or to modify in a faster way for rapid growth that can happen that you didn't plan for. And the last thing I think I'd say is that these tools can also be helpful for communities like ours that may have an environmental mandate. So in the case of the San Antonio water system, it has an EPA mandate to take care of certain old lead pipes that were in the system. And so when they have to make decisions about the new people, 1.5 million coming in, and the replacement under the federal court order from the EPA, there may be tools that can be developed to help make things more efficient and more cost effective.
Great. So I promised the panel before we started that I'm not going to break from script, but I'm going to break from script. Second question. So what I'm hearing is that there's a clear set of operating decisions that AI can help, and it sounds like it is helping in a number of examples. To connect to Fred's session, curious to hear your thoughts from your perspective. The water space you're in, is it dark, noisy, or intelligent? And why would you say that? So Fred talked about a dark environment, a noisy environment, an intelligent environment, and he asked us to sort of give our sense of where we were as companies. From your perspective, how would you rate?
So I think we are. My CITOs answered the question earlier. We're a good noisy. good noisy, because you could be bad noisy and just have data sets everywhere and Excel spreadsheets everywhere and no ability to pull information from it or use it in a valuable way. So we're on our way with our data sets. So we're pretty good mostly, and we're replacing some of our systems now. Very useful information, I would say, good data. Are we ready for an AI tool to pull from it? For the most probably would be there, but we're not further than noisy. I call it good noisy. Yeah.
Nice. And Mitch, with the perspective over a couple of companies, how would you rate it?
I agree. I mean, we're seeing that there's a lot of data. There's a lot of high quality data, but it's not interconnected. It's not being leveraged for insight as much as it should be. Little pockets of excellence and a lot of great teams and utilities, but looking for more cohesive insights that we can pull.
Fredrick?
Yeah, I think, if you look at the very basic thing of household metering, right? UK, there's a statistic, only 40% of the households are metered, right? Until and unless you can actually measure and monitor something, it's extremely difficult to manage it. So water utilities have picked that up as an opportunity, and every single water utility now in the UK has a smart water metering program, and the aim is to see how we can reduce the demand, because I think the future of sustainability, I say, is going to be to do more with less, right? So it's not about just pumping more water into and feeding the demand. So, the overall goal in the UK is how you reduce per capita consumption from, right now it's close to 140 liters per person. How do you bring it down to 110 liters per person, right? For that starts with metering, measuring the water consumption of these people. And then how do you kind of drive customer side or demand side management, it's called, right? So, by driving, kind of influencing the change of behavior of customers, making them more conscious about, of the water experience. So I think on your dark, noisy and element, right? I think we are still in the dark, because when it comes to water, there's very little data to work on right now.
Okay, interesting. Tommy?
I'm not sure I have enough data points to provide the ultimate answer. I can tell you that right before I came over here, I got a text message from our smart meter that I may have a possible leak because it detected irregular water activity. But of course we had a big freeze and we all had to turn our pipes on and let them run a little bit more than I normally do. So did the water utility ask me for the feedback after I checked and I saw that I didn't have broken pipes? No. And that is important in the AI feedback improvement model, so that AI could learn that during a freeze you may have to run the pipes and there may be irregular, and so maybe the volume of water that you calculate is a early detection for a leak is not quite that. Your algorithm's a little off and you need to perfect that. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that until I can get more data into our whole system.
You being notified of a leak reminds me of about 2-3 weeks ago. I woke up and I had 4 SMSs on the hour saying I've got a leak at my house, and then my email had leak. Contacted the plumber. They spent 2 days going through the house, no leak. The municipality had sent it to the wrong email address. So that's probably bad noisy. Okay, so what I'm hearing is there's lots of data, there's lots of use cases, there's lots of sensors. We've got like a rich trove to build intelligence on. From my experience, there's lots of impetus, right? The boards and the executives are saying use AI, be more intelligent. And what we see is with the best of intentions, a journey to start to build a use case, and 6 months later, it's like it died. We didn't get to a dashboard, we didn't get the data, or we didn't get sign-off, or there was governance issues. And really sort of getting beyond, or to a pilot, and then beyond a pilot, to Fred's third point, it just seems like harder than what it should be. So I guess your experience of that process, and if you get stuck, why you get stuck, and how do we start really delivering production-grade value?
Yeah. Before I get to that question, I'm chomping to say this to Tommy. He brought the lead service lines, and there was a mandate to do inventory in your system. Man, if I had an AI tool, I could just send it on his way and then spit the information back to me in a week, and we could submit it to the EPA, and we're done. That's how it sounds like AI is that powerful, right? And it took us over a year to do ours, right? So, but to your question, we have data dashboards. I'm a believer in full use of them, not to just say we have them and to make them look pretty. We want to be transparent, and the information that it illustrates has got to be honest and true, right? So we can actually address issues. For me, it always comes down to the people and the process. So I think dashboards kind of linger and go to the wayside when folks don't use it. But I think we stress that it's a tool for us to use. I think data dashboards could be punitive in certain places, and they don't. That's why you see them die, I guess. We use it to actually identify issues. I think the people, we have folks that, utilities, the folks that have been there for years, say decades. Typically, utilities are built by families. You could name 3 or 4 families in the organization. I think we all know that. And then also, there's folks that have the institutional knowledge about certain aspects of the system that aren't documented. They're not in the procedure, they're not in SOP. If they retire, we're gonna be in trouble, So bring them along in the process with the data dashboards. The process meaning, how can we get that in a procedure or SOP? And I think when we can document that, we can have an AI tool that pulls from all this information, so the next generation of workforce can come in and just basically, talk to the tool, and the tool can tell you the issues of low pressure on this end of the system and things of that nature. So I think when you get them to use it that way, you get that trust, and they start to use it more, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've also found that if it's being used with value and feedback loops and it becomes part of the workflow, then it sort of embeds, and then when that's working, then there'll be investment to the next one, and it becomes virtuous. Mitch?
Yeah, what I think is so interesting about this topic is, it's easy for us to get tunnel vision and think that this is an our company problem or our team problem or our industry problem. Earlier this week, I was meeting and we were talking about AI workflows and struggles with adoption, and it was with CIOs and CTOs across industries, so from MasterCard and from a number of other industries outside of engineering. And it was good to remind me that every industry, every company has this problem, and that's because it's a human problem. It's so easy for us, especially those that are technology focused, to think, if I give people data, they'll make the right decision, they'll use it. But the change management exercise that is required to transition that line of thinking is significant. And that should be a focus area anytime that we're trying to implement a solution like this. Understanding what are the real pain points, what are the job functions that we're trying to augment and support, and make sure that we're adapting the tools to meet those needs rather than just expecting people to adapt to the tool. And it's a challenge. I mean, it's something that's, like I say, it's not unique to us. It's not unique to water. And it's something that I think that all of us as humans need to really cope with. And I don't think we've done it yet. I think it's going to take a few more years for us to really accept and trust AI enough. And like you mentioned, that positive feedback loop is critical too. If we're using these tools and we're upset about the answer, do we say, or do our people say, I'm upset about this, I'm not going to use it? Or do they say, oh, let's work on this and make it better and make it meet the need?
Yeah, it's very well put. I mean, from our experience, we always underestimate the change management, and the failure happens at that point because we haven't invested enough in it and invested early enough in it. Just to add 2 other things that we also struggle with, the training is important, and also the fear management, right? Because, if you implement this, people are worried that they're going to lose their job, right? So what's in it for you to implement this new technology that'll put you out of work, right? So that's also another dimension to work through.
Right, and as I was mentioning earlier, there's there's a lack of skills in the space. I think I can say quite confidently that in the water space, there's going to be plenty of work for us, even when we adopt AI more fully. But helping overcome that fear, that human element's key. And if you're spending money on implementing these solutions and you're not setting aside funds to address the change management exercise, then you're going to be in a weak spot.
So Fredrick, at Swan, you'd have a good overview of innovation and AI pilots. What's your perspective on how it's going and what we need to do to break through?
Yeah, pilots to scale, right? I mean, there's an interesting quote of the deputy CEO of PUB. He said, on the transformation journey that they undertook, right, it was extremely crucial to ensure every single employee of PUB was on board on his mission. Right. I think the people thing is sometimes it's understated, but I think that is critical. I mean, any transformation project, it fails just simply because you're not able to get people on board that. And every single person needs to come on board, but it's not just the person. If you look at a water utility, the persons are different personas. You have the field person is very different to the CFO, to the CEO, to the procurement person, so it needs to be personalized. And, it needs to be personalized in a manner where it's addressing the productivity of that individual. It gets back to the productivity paradox which Fred was talking about earlier today, right? How do you just personalize it to that level, where, experience is the current currency. I mean, data was a currency, but currently it's the experience. The better personalized solutions you get, people to use it, and get them on board on the transformation, and then every single individual in the utility gets on board. That's when you get on the bandwagon for transformation to achieve your goals, yeah.
Which is non-trivial, right? Getting the whole organization behind a single goal is quite a mission. Tommy?
Isn't there an AI button for that, I think?
Yeah, coming soon.
Yeah, so it's my job as the only elected official, I think, on the panel, to kind of give you a little prep before you get to the bar. And that is, politics is not an industry that is actually always data-driven. I know I'm with a bunch of tech bros and gals, but this shouldn't be a newsflash that in politics, the politicians are not always interested in the best data. And so sometimes you're competing with ideology and viewpoints and email campaigns about whatever people think AI is going to do. Information warfare with respect to what is AI going to do. You will see, especially those of you at SAN, as you begin to lobby, you're going to face questions about, well, what does your product mean for AI data centers in our water? And you may face organized opposition in the next couple of years just based upon that issue alone, which may say we need to stop this until we can figure out the water situation. And it may not have anything to do, per se, with the product you're selling, but it will be in the body politic conversation. So I wanted to make sure that folks understood that the influence of campaign contributions and cronyism and relationship, all of that comes into play, not just getting the whole departmental staff aware and trained. That's a whole nother dynamic. That is a very inexact science. But I think to combat it, and I will say this as an elected, my mother worked for IBM for 25 years, and I come academically from a very data-driven kind of policy and academic life. But most electeds, if you actually watch the proceedings, they gloss over all the tech stuff. They're not paying attention in a lot of cases. And so it is important that you invite them to forums like these so that they can really digest it, as opposed to hearing about it maybe for the second time on an agenda of 100 items. All of that plays into the championing and the whole buy-in from a community perspective. So prioritization based upon leadership's needs, community needs, is really important to getting that. And the other thing I would recommend for those trying to get more business is to look at how cooperative purchasing agreements can help move your product faster through the procurement process, maybe because you're sole source or because you've got a contract that's already easy to tee up and everybody get buy-in because it's already pre-negotiated as state cooperative buying. So anyway, that's enough for me.
Just, Shaun, I think just to add what Mr. Tommy mentioned, right, especially the data centers and water utilities, that is something which is really cropping up quite big here in the US, right? To the extent that the energy utilities are increasing the energy tariffs to water utilities. And the reason being because they just want to manage the demand and supply situation, right? So it's not just the water situation that the water utilities are going to be facing with the data centers. Sometimes it's overhyped in terms of the actual water that's going to be needed by the data center. It's going to need certain amount of water, but not to the volumes that some estimates put it out there. But it's more the energy side. And, so to Tommy's point as well, right? It's quite important to get that community element, the discussions on board, right? Because that's when, and that's it'll become even more stark going forward now.
And let me just say, pardon the analogy, but if I'm giving an inside colonoscopy look at what the industry needs to do to get this together, it very much should focus a lot of its programming on water and on power and how the AI can help it reduce energy. Because if you actually get to a point where, as an industry, you can say, yeah, we're taking a lot of energy, but we're saving it here, or yeah, we're taking a lot of water, but we saved you an equivalent amount there. Those are going to be key to the future of the buy-in.
Tommy, I really like how you frame that. I mean, as a ex-actuary scientist and a lot of the people in the organization, we think if we can build the best algorithm that predicts the thing, we're going to win, right? But it's much more than that. It's the process, the workflow, the leadership, the community, the regulation, the politics, and really, almost to Fred's point, the productivity paradox. You've got this great technology, but the real world isn't sort of catching up, right? So a big part of this job of ours is to change the system, which is an end-to-end piece of work, which is long and challenging and much more than just a time series algorithm. This clock was counting down, now it's counting up, so I'm worried something's going to explode soon. So let me close out. We didn't get through many questions, but I appreciate the passion and insights and comments from the crowd. And if anybody's got stuff to add, we can talk at the bar. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Let's give it up one more time for that incredible conversation on AI and the future of water.